The 26th of October, 1942, 8:45 hours. Somewhere above the Santa Cruz Islands. The Japanese A6M0 is a Predator engineered for perfection. It dances where other aircraft lumber. At 18,000 feet, it closes on a lumbering American Avenger torpedo bomber, a slow and heavy beast caught in the wrong element. The Zero's pilot needs no complex maneuver. His approach is clinical, almost contemptuous. By every known rule of aerial combat in this war, the Avenger is already dead. Its single rear-facing .30 caliber machine gun is a pop gun against the Zero's twin 20mm cannons and rifle. Caliber machine guns, the mathematics are absolute. The outcome is preordained. Inside the Avenger's glass greenhouse, the gunner, Seaman James O'Hara, sees the sleek silhouette filling his gun sight. The cockpit of the Zero is close enough to see the outline of the pilot's flight helmet. He squeezes his trigger. The tracers from his gun arc toward the Zero, a pathetic string of beads against the vast Pacific sky. They spark harmlessly against the Zero's engine cowling. The Japanese pilot holds his approach, unshaken. He is seconds from firing his own devastating armament, from turning the Avenger into a shredded, burning coffin. But then, if you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Something unnatural happens. One of O'Hara's final rounds in that desperate burst does not spark and ricochet. It punctures. It does not strike the engine block, but the slender fuselage behind the cockpit. For a fraction of a second, nothing. Then, a sun ignites inside the Zero's airframe. A flash of light so violently white it bleaches the blue from the sky. The fighter does not simply catch fire. It is consumed. The aviation fuel in its unprotected wing root tank detonates with apocalyptic force. One moment, a symbol of imperial dominance. The next, a disintegrating torch, shedding aluminum skin and molten parts into the void. The Avenger shudders through the shockwave. O'Hara stares, his own gun silent. On the flight deck of the carrier, USS Enterprise, an intelligence officer watching through binoculars lowers them slowly. He has just witnessed an anomaly, a statistical impossibility, a kill that, by all rights, belongs to the Zero, not the Avenger. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. This event is not luck. It is a quiet, brutal correction. A secret, delivered in a .30 caliber cartridge, that is about to rewrite the rules of the Pacific Air War. A secret born not in a hangar, but in a chemist's lab. Forged in the desperation of men who were tired of burning. The anomaly over Santa Cruz was a single data point in a sky of carnage. To understand its significance, you must first understand the scale of the American nightmare. December 1941 to mid-1942. The Philippine Sea, the Coral Sea, the Java Sea. American and Allied pilots are flying into a meat grinder. Their aircraft, the P-40 Warhawk, the F-4F Wildcat, rugged, built to take a punch, but they are outmaneuvered, out-climbed, and out, fought by the Mitsubishi A6M0. The Zero is a revelation, a samurai's sword from aluminum and myth. It possesses a power-to-weight ratio that seems to defy physics. It can turn inside any Allied fighter. It has a staggering range, appearing where Allied command swears it cannot be. But its most terrifying advantage is not performance. It is psychology. American pilots are trained in energy fighting doctrine. Keep your speed, make slashing attacks, never dogfight on the enemy's terms. The Zero shatters this doctrine. It forces the fight into a horizontal turning duel. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. A contest where it is invincible. Bullets from American .50 calibers seem to pass through its fragile airframe without effect. Pilots return to carriers and bases with shattered confidence, reporting they poured hundreds of rounds into a Zero only to watch it fly away. The truth is more brutal. The Zero is built for agility, not durability. It lacks self-sealing fuel tanks. It has no armor plate behind the pilot. Its design philosophy is absolute victory through maneuver. If you can hit it, you can kill it. The problem is, you cannot hit it. And so, American pilots die. They die in burning Wildcats, spiraling into the jungle canopy. They die in the water, watching Japanese fighters circle like sharks. By the summer of 1942, the kill-to-loss ratio is a hemorrhage the United States cannot sustain. The Zero is not just an aircraft, it is a specter of inevitable defeat, a cultural symbol of Japanese technological and spiritual supremacy. Every engagement begins with the same unspoken calculation. How many of us will we lose to shoot down one of them? This is the crucible. This is the despair into which a quiet man in a laboratory at the Naval Proving Ground in Dahlgren, Virginia, pours his focus. His name is not a headline. His war is fought not with a joystick, but with a slide rule and a Bunsen burner. He is tasked with an impossible problem. Find a way to make a hit count. Make one round do the work of 100 Beccas. The pilots cannot hit the zero enough times. So the round, when it finally strikes, must become an inferno. The Naval Proving Ground, Dahlgren, Virginia, 1941. The problem is one of physics and cold industrial logic. A standard .50 caliber armor piercing round is a sledgehammer. It is designed to punch through steel plate, to destroy engines, to cripple machinery. But against the Zero's delicate, unarmored airframe, it is overkill. It passes clean through, leaving a small, neat hole. It is a through and through wound that a Zero can often survive. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The aircraft is so light, so devoid of heavy structural members, that the round expends its enormous kinetic energy on empty space. What is needed is not more force, but more consequence. The answer lies not in ballistics, but in pyrotechnics. The concept is ancient, incendiary ammunition, but existing designs are unreliable, weak, or dangerous to the men firing them. The standard incendiary round of the early war is little more than a bullet filled with white phosphorus, a chemical that burns upon contact with air. It is unpredictable. It can ignite prematurely in the gun barrel, cook off in a hot ammo belt, or fail to ignite at all. The man tasked with solving this is Dr. Arthur J. Abrams, a civilian physicist working for the National Defense Research Committee. His laboratory is a world away from the coral atolls and oil-stained flight decks. His enemy is not a pilot, but a set of immutable chemical and physical constraints. The requirement is absurd. Create a bullet that can be fired from a machine gun vibrating at thousands of rounds per minute, withstand crushing acceleration, travel over a mile, and then, upon striking a paper-thin aluminum skin, reliably transform into a miniature sun. The breakthrough is not a new explosive, but a new reaction. Abrams and his team abandon white phosphorus. They turn to a mixture of magnesium and a unique incendiary agent, a compound that, upon impact, creates a friction so intense, a heat so concentrated, it can ignite magnesium in a split second. Magnesium burns at approximately 5,600 degrees Fahrenheit. It is a fire that water cannot extinguish. It is a fire that consumes metal. They call it the M1 incendiary. It is a deceptively simple-looking .50 caliber round. Inside its copper jacket lies a core of magnesium alloy, and ahead of it, the impact-sensitive incendiary charge. The engineering elegance is horrifying. The round is a kinetic penetrator and a chemical torch in one. On impact, the incendiary charge detonates, simultaneously igniting the magnesium core and punching a hole. The burning magnesium is then injected through that hole into the target's interior. It is not a bullet that sets something on fire. It is a bullet that becomes the fire and delivers it directly into the bloodstream of the enemy aircraft. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. But in a Dahlgren lab, it is just theory, a controlled experiment, a successful test against a static aluminum panel. The real test awaits, 8,000 miles away, in a sky where American pilots are running out of time, and where the Zero still believes itself untouchable. Guadalcanal, August, November 1942. Henderson Field, the slot. The crucible for the new weapon is not a testing range, but a putrid, fever-drenched strip of coral and steel matting hacked from the jungle. Henderson Field is less an air base and more a stubborn wound in the side of the Japanese Empire, held by the Marines, bombarded nightly by Japanese battleships, shelled by artillery from the surrounding hills. It is the stage for a battle of attrition. So visceral it defies strategy. Here, pilots live in mud, fight malaria, and sleep to the soundtrack of their own perimeter being probed. And every dawn, the Zeros come. The Cactus Air Force, a ragged mixture of Marine, Navy, and Army Air Force pilots flying Wildcats, P-39 Era Cobras, and P-40 perpetually outnumbered, exhausted, and flying inferior aircraft. Their tactic becomes one of grim, brute force pragmatism. They call it the Thok Weave, a desperate defensive scissors maneuver invented by Lieutenant Commander John Thok. Two Wildcats fly parallel, covering each other's tails. When a Zero latches onto one, they turn toward each other, forcing the Zero to fly into the guns of the other. It is an admission of weakness. It says, "We cannot beat you in your game, so we will make you play ours and hope the math works out." The math is still against them. A zero can absorb a surprising amount of .50 caliber punishment and keep flying. Pilots return, their guns empty, swearing they hit their target dozens of times with no result. Morale is a tangible, depleting resource. The zero's aura of invincibility hardens into accepted fact. Then, the first crates marked with unfamiliar lot numbers arrive. They are mixed into the standard ammunition belts. No grand briefing, no tactical revolution. Just a different color tip on some of the rounds in the feed tray. A pilot's job is to fly, fight, and survive. The composition of his bullets is a quartermaster's concern. The early combat reports filtered back to intelligence officers are fragmented, confused. Pilots speak of weird flashes, of zeros that just blew up after a short burst. The gun camera footage, a new and critical tool, tells a more objective story. Frame by grainy frame, analysts see it. A standard burst strikes a zero's wing. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Most rounds spark and vanish, but one round, the one with the different tip, does not spark. It penetrates, and a microsecond later, a torrent of blinding white flame erupts from inside the wing, followed swiftly by the catastrophic orange fireball of the fuel tank detonating. The effect is not just physical, it is psychological. For the American pilot, it is a sudden, violent correction to the universe, a confirmation that the enemy can, in fact, be killed. For the Japanese pilot, it is the arrival of a new and inexplicable terror. His aircraft, designed to avoid hits, now has a fatal allergy to them. A single round from a gun he has learned to discount can now erase him from the sky. At Henderson Field, they don't call it the M1 incendiary, they don't know its name. They call it, simply, the magic bullet. And the first pilot to truly harness its dark potential is about to become a hunter where before he could only be prey. November 1942, over the Solomon Sea. Captain Joseph Foss, United States Marine Corps. Foss is not a traditional ace. At 27, he is an older pilot, a former football player, and marksmanship instructor. His approach to the Wildcat is not that of a dancer, but of a brawler. He understands its limitations with a cold clarity. It cannot turn with a zero, it cannot climb with it, so he discards the rulebook. The zero wrote. His doctrine is simplicity itself. Get close, aim for the cockpit or the engine, make every round count, before the new ammunition. This doctrine was a formula for a short, heroic life. You had to get dangerously close to ensure your .50 calibers had a chance of doing meaningful damage, all while the zero could kill you from a wider, safer angle. It was a suicide pact. But now, Foss gun belts are interlaced with the new incendiary rounds. He does not know the chemistry. He knows the effect. As he leads his flight of Wildcats from Henderson Field, the calculus of the duel has invisibly shifted. The encounter begins as they all do. A swarm of zeros, sleek and confident, descends on the slower American formation. The Japanese pilots expect the usual dance. The Wildcats will try to dive, to weave, to avoid the turning fight. Foss does the opposite. He picks a target and flies directly at it. A head-on pass that violates every instinct of self-preservation. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Tracers lace the sky between them. The Zero pilot, conditioned to believe American fire is ineffective, holds his course a fraction too long. Foss' convergence point is not the engine. It is the center line of the fuselage. Just behind the canopy, his thumb depresses the trigger, a 2-second burst. Most of the rounds are standard ball and armor, piercing. But mixed among them are 3 of the new incendiaries. The result is not a gradual fire. It is a violent internal deflagration. The incendiary rounds pierce the thin skin behind the pilot, ignite upon striking the structural members inside, and inject superheated magnesium into the space containing the aviation fuel lines and the unprotected oxygen system. The Zero does not simply explode. It unzips. A seam of white fire races along its spine before the entire forward fuel tank detonates, shearing the aircraft in two. Foss banks away, the shockwave rocking his Wildcat. There is no time to process. Another Zero is on his wingman. Foss throws his aircraft into a violent, energy-sapping turn move that should leave him a sitting duck. But the Zero pilot, having just witnessed his comrade vanish in a novel and horrifying manner, hesitates. That hesitation is a lifetime. Foss gets a snapshot, a fleeting deflection shot that no gunner would credit. A single incendiary round striking the Zero's wing root. A flash, then the wing folds upward and the aircraft enters a flat, burning spin. In one engagement, Foss' score ticks upward by 2. The tactics that were once suicidal are now lethal. The Wildcat, in the hands of a pilot who understands the new arithmetic, is no longer prey. It is an ambush predator. The close-range, snapshot kill launch, a desperate gamble, is becoming a standardized method of execution. At intelligence debriefs, the stories from Foss and others like him coalesce into a new, brutal reality. The Zero's greatest strength, its lightweight. Unarmored construction has been turned against it with surgical cruelty. The Americans have not built a better fighter. They have built a better bullet. And the Japanese High Command, thousands of miles away in Tokyo, is about to receive reports of a mystery they cannot explain. Their elite pilots, their samurai of the sky, are dying in flames at an accelerating, impossible rate. Imperial Japanese Navy Headquarters, Tokyo. Early 1943, the reports are at first statistical anomalies, then a troubling pattern, and finally a crisis that cannot be ignored: the kill-to-loss ratio in the Solomons, once overwhelmingly in Japan's favor, is collapsing. A steady, dripping attrition of veteran pilotsmen who cannot be replaced, now accompanied by disturbing operational details. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Pilots returning from missions speak of a new American tactic, a willingness to take head-on passes, to engage at point-blank range. This is tactical insanity against the Zero. Yet, they report, the Americans are succeeding. Aircraft are not just being shot down, they are being annihilated. The word explosion appears with alarming frequency. Not the explosion of a fuel tank hit after sustained fire, but immediate, catastrophic disintegrations from what appear to be single bursts. The Japanese High Command grapples with two theories. The first, the Americans have deployed a new secret fighter aircraft, one with devastating firepower. Reconnaissance and prisoner interrogations disprove this. The Wildcats and Airacobras are the same. The second, more unsettling theory, the Americans have somehow improved their pilots' marksmanship to a superhuman degree. This, too, feels impossible. The quality of Japanese pilot training is still far superior. The truth is hidden in the most mundane of places, the ammunition supply chain. While Japanese intelligence is obsessed with airframes and engines, American logistics officers are overseeing the mass shipment of small arms ammunition. The M1 incendiary is now being produced by the tens of millions. It is no longer an experiment. It is standard issue. Every fifth round in a standard American .50 caliber belt is an incendiary, mixed with armor, piercing, and tracer rounds in a specific, deadly recipe known as the universal belt. This logistical fact is invisible to Japanese analysts, so they search for answers in the wrong places, wasting precious time. They order their own aircraft designers to investigate adding more armor, self-sealing tanks to the Zero modifications that will blunt its legendary performance. The very soul of the aircraft, its agility, is being sacrificed to counter a threat they do not fully understand. Meanwhile, in the cockpit of a Zero, the psychological landscape has irrevocably shifted. The early war confidence, the sense of divine invincibility, is gone. Replacing it is a cold, corrosive fear. American pilots no longer flee the turning fight. They seek the quick, savage exchange of fire. A single, near-miss burst that once would have been shrugged off now carries the promise of instant cremation. The technological asymmetry is complete. The Americans have not matched the Zero's design. They have made its design philosophy obsolete. They have weaponized its greatest vulnerability. A pilot's skill, his years of training, his samurai spirit, are now secondary to a chemical reaction happening inside a 1-ounce cylinder of brass and magnesium. And this asymmetry is about to be scaled, industrialized, and unleashed in a single monstrous aerial engagement, where the numbers will be so vast, the results so lopsided, that the myth of the Zero will be shattered forever over the deep blue water of the Philippine Sea. The 19th of June, 1944. The Philippine Sea. Aboard the USS Lexington, Task Force 58. Admiral Mark Mitcher stares at the plot map. Before him is the largest carrier battle in history, the climax of a 2-year war of industrial and technological attrition. The Japanese have committed nearly every remaining carrier and over 500 aircraft to a decisive showdown. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Operation A Go. Their plan is elegant in its desperation. use their shorter-range aircraft, launched from carriers, to bait the massive American fleet into range of land-based air power from Guam and Rota. It is a pincer movement designed to level the playing field. Mitchell knows the plan. American codebreakers have laid it bare. He holds every card: more carriers, more ships, more planes, better radar, and veteran pilots. But one card is decisive, and it is not on the plot map. It is in the ammunition magazines deep below the waterline of his carriers, in the belts feeding the guns of over 450 Hellcats, Avengers, and Dauntlesses. The F-6F Hellcat is the Zero's designated executioner, built specifically to counter it. It is faster, tougher, and carries more ammunition, but the Hellcat's true weapon is not its airframe. It is the mix of rounds its 6.50 caliber machine guns fire. The universal belt is now refined to a science. One armor, piercing, one incendiary, one tracer, a repeating sequence of penetration, ignition, and aim correction. A three-step chemical and kinetic reaction optimized to turn Japanese aircraft into flying pyres. At 5 a.m., the first wave of Japanese aircraft is detected on radar. Fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes. They are met by a wall of Hellcats vectored by shipboard controllers with God's eye view. The Americans hold the altitude, the sun, and the initiative. History will call what happens next the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The opening minutes are not a dogfight. They are a systemic demolition. Lieutenant Commander David McCampbell, leading a flight of Hellcats from the USS Essex, engages a formation of Judasaichi D-50 dive bombers. He does not maneuver for a classic dogfight. He makes a high-side slashing attack. His gunsight Piper washes over a Judas fuselage. A 1-second burst, the standard rounds punch holes. The interlaced incendiary rounds find the bomber's internal fuel cells. The Judy does not simply smoke. It erupts into a comet, shedding wings and empennage as it plummets. All across the sky, the story repeats. Zeros attempting their signature tight turns find Hellcats willing to engage, their pilots trusting their armor and their firepower. A short burst into a turning Zero's wing route is now a death sentence. The magnesium core of the M1 round, burning at 5,000 degrees, ignores aluminum. It fuses it. It turns the wing's main spar into a molten structural failing point. Aircraft break apart in mid-maneuver as if their very bones have been dissolved by acid fire. By noon, the first wave is annihilated. Over 250 Japanese aircraft are blown from the sky. American losses are a fraction. The ratio is beyond belief. In the ready rooms of the American carriers, pilots report with a stunned, almost mechanical detachment. Bogey exploded on first pass. 2 bursts. Target disintegrated. The language is that of demolition, not aerial combat. The Japanese have thrown their best remaining pilots into a furnace. They do not understand their strategy, their training. Their valor all are rendered irrelevant by a technological secret measured in millimeters and milligrams. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The balance of power in the Pacific Air War has not just shifted, it has been atomized. And the day is not over. A second, larger wave is forming. The greatest aerial armada Japan can muster is now flying, unknowingly, into a sky that has been scientifically prepared to burn it from existence. Afternoon, the 19th of June, 1944, the Philippine Sea. The second wave is larger. Over 120 aircraft Zeros, Jills, Judas take off from the Japanese carriers Zuikaku, Junyo, and Chiyoda. The pilots are briefed on the fierce resistance, but the scale of the earlier massacre is not yet fully known to them. They fly west toward the American fleet, a formation born of a doctrine that no longer has a foundation in reality. American radar plots the approaching swarm from over 100 miles out. The combat information centers aboard ships like the Enterprise and Yorktown are calm. Methodical places, the blips on the radar scopes are not an armada. They are targets to be processed. Fighter direction officers vector squadrons of Hellcats like chess pieces, stacking them at high altitude between the sun and the approaching Japanese. The intercept is not a battle. It is an industrial process. Lieutenant Alexander Vrasiu, a Hellcat pilot from the USS Lexington, is already an ace. He is vectored toward a formation of Judy dive bombers escorted by Zeros. He descends with his wingman, energy advantage absolute. He does not pick a dogfight with the escorts, he ignores them. He points his nose at the lead Judy and fires a sustained burst from 600 yards. Well outside what was once considered effective range, the stream of Fay-caliber rounds, a mix of penetrators and incendiaries, walks into the bomber from this distance. It is a statistical certainty. Several of the M-Fay incendiary rounds will find their mark. They do, the Judas' entire forward section seems to swallow a flashbulb. Then, the aviation fuel and ordnance within it cook off in a secondary explosion so violent, it takes out the bomber flying in tight formation beside it. 2 aircraft vanish in one burst. V. Rashubanks already acquiring his next target. This is the new calculus. Volume of fire enhanced by chemical certainty. The Americans no longer need to be marksmen. They need only to be hose operators, directing a stream of liquid fire that guarantees catastrophic kills. Across the sky, the Japanese formation disintegrates. Coordination breaks down. Escorting Zeros, desperate to protect their charges, find themselves out, climbed, out, dived, and out. Gunned by the heavier Hellcats. When they do get a Hellcat in their sights, they discover a chilling reality. Their 20mm cannon shells and 7.7mm machine gun rounds often fail to bring down the rugged American fighter. The Hellcat can absorb damage and return home. The Zero cannot absorb a single well-placed incendiary round. By late afternoon, the second wave is a smattering of survivors fleeing back to their carriers. Some never make it, lost to fuel exhaustion or chased down by roaming Hellcats. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The total score for the day is beyond comprehension. Over 400 Japanese aircraft destroyed against American losses of around 30. The kill ratio approaches 15 to -1. On the flag bridge of the Japanese carrier Zuikaku, Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa receives the fragmentary reports his carrier decks, which launched full air groups hours before, are now empty. His strike force, the last trained backbone of the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Arm, has been wiped out. He has not lost a ship to enemy action, but his fleet is now functionally useless, a set of floating hulls without wings. The weapon that eviscerated his air power was not a bomb or a torpedo, it was a bullet. And as night falls over the Philippine Sea, the American fleet is intact, angry, and now turns its gaze west. The hunters have become the hunted. The carriers that launched the doomed strikes are now naked. Their location known, steaming blindly into the darkness with only a few combat air patrols left for protection. Task Force 58 has won the day. But Admiral Mitcher is not satisfied. He wants the carriers. And for the first time in naval history, a fleet will launch a full-scale airstrike at extreme range, chasing an enemy into the dying light, with pilots who will have to find their way home in total darkness. All because a single type of bullet gave them the time, the confidence, and the brutal efficiency to end the air battle before sunset. Dusk, the 19th of June, 1944. Task Force 58 turns west. Admiral Mark Mitcher makes a decision that defies all conventional naval wisdom. The Japanese fleet is retreating, but it is still over 300 miles away at the absolute limit of his aircraft's combat radius. To launch a strike now means his pilots will attack at twilight and return in pitch darkness to a blacked-out fleet on a black ocean. Many will not make it. They will run out of fuel and ditch. They will become lost. They will die in the water. But Mitcher understands the strategic moment. The Japanese carriers are defenseless. Their air groups are gone, vaporized in the turkey shoot. This is a chance to annihilate the last of Japan's carrier strike force. He turns to his chief of staff. The order is quiet. Final, launch everything. Across the flight decks of the American carriers, a frenzied, unprecedented operation begins. Bombers and torpedo planes, never intended for night operations, are loaded with ordnance and fueled to the absolute limits. Pilots are briefed hastily. The target, the fleeing Japanese mobile fleet. The problem, finding it in the gathering dark and then finding home. This monumental risk is only possible because of the day's staggering success. The M1 incendiary round has provided a perverse gift, time. By annihilating the Japanese air threat with ruthless efficiency, it has ended the air battle by mid-afternoon. It has saved fuel, spared aircraft, and left the American flight decks and pilots relatively fresh. The entire terrible calculus of the dusk strike sees certain losses. The navigational nightmares built upon the foundation of a bullet that burned through the enemy's wings in minutes, not hours. 8/16/21, the first of 240 aircraft roar off the decks, turning their noses into the deepening purple of the east, chasing a setting sun toward an enemy They hope is where intelligence says it is. For the Japanese fleet, the reality is one of terrifying vulnerability. Radar picks up the massive inbound raid. Admiral Ozawa has almost nothing left to throw at it. A handful of Zeros scramble from his decks, the shattered remnants of his combat air patrol. They are brave. They are also obsolete. As they climb to intercept the first waves of American Avengers and Helldivers, they are met by escorting Hellcats. The engagements are brief, almost perfunctory. A Hellcat pilot, low on fuel and focused on protecting his strike group, fires a snapshot at his Zero climbing to intercept. A single incendiary round, mixed in the burst, strikes the Zero's cockpit area. The aircraft does not explode. It simply becomes a torch, a beacon of dying light against the twilight, spiraling down into the sea. It is a warning flare for the entire Japanese fleet. There is no sanctuary in the sky. With the pathetic air cover swept aside, the American dive bombers and torpedo planes begin their runs. The carriers Hai, Juni, and Zuikaku are illuminated by flares and the flash of anti-aircraft guns. Bombs fall, torpedoes streak through the water. And as the American pilots turn for home, they face a darkness more complete than any they have known. The victory they have just delivered is immediate. The cost they are about to pay is personal and unfolding in the lonely cockpit of every man trying to find a carrier in an endless, starless night. The M1 incendiary gave them the day. Now the night will take its own toll. Night, the 20th of June, 1944. The long return. The strike was a tactical success. The Japanese carrier Hai is sunk, others are damaged. But for the American airmen, the mission is only half over. They are now scattered across 300 miles of Black Ocean, low on fuel, navigating by dead reckoning and prayer. Radio silence is strict. To break it is to give away the fleet's position. In his cockpit, a Hellcat pilot watches his fuel gauge needle tremble on empty. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The mental calculus is brutal. He has flown beyond the theoretical point of no return. The equation that sent him out, the efficiency of the day's kills. The saved fuel from a short fight is now a cold abstraction. Below him is only ink. No carrier lights, no horizon, nothing. Admiral Mitcher, on the bridge of the Lexington, knows the grim numbers. He knows many of his men will not find the fleet. Standard procedure is blackout to turn on the carrier. Deck lights is to make the entire task force a glowing target for any enemy submarine. It is an unacceptable risk. The logical, by-the-book decision is to maintain darkness and recover who you can. But Mitcher is not a by-the-book commander. He stares into the same darkness that is swallowing his pilots. He has asked these men to do the impossible, to win a battle in a day, and then push beyond all limits to deliver the killing blow. The weapon that enabled this, the incendiary round, was a tool of utter destruction. Now he must choose an act of profound vulnerability. He gives the order across Task Force 58. Searchlights stab into the sky, not to find enemy aircraft but to act as beacons. Deck lights blaze on every carrier, turning them into floating cities of light. Running lights are lit on every destroyer, cruiser, and battleship, outlining the fleet against the sea. It is a breathtaking, brazen violation of every wartime security protocol. Mitcher is illuminating the entire U.S. Pacific Fleet's premier striking force for any enemy to see. Over the radio, the strict silence is broken with a simple, magnificent command: turn on the lights for the pilots lost in the void. It is a miracle. One by one, they see the distant glow on the horizon. It is not a single ship, but a constellation. The entire fleet is a welcome mat laid out on the Pacific. They stagger in, engines coughing on fumes, Avengers and Helldivers. Some hold by flak, some with wounded crew, make desperate, tail-hook engagements on the glowing decks. Planes ditch alongside destroyers, their crews plucked from the water by small boats. The losses are heavy. Over 80 aircraft are lost to ditching, crash landings, or simply vanishing. But hundreds of men are saved who, by the cold math of war, should have been written off. This moment, the lighted fleet becomes legend. It is the human counterpoint to the day's mechanical slaughter. The same command that wielded a bullet designed to bury men alive without remorse now risks its entire navy to bring those same men home. The duality is complete. The M1 incendiary was the weapon of maximum strategic efficiency, a tool that allowed for the ruthless, risk-filled dusk strike. And the lighted fleet was the repayment of that risk, a command that valued the pilot over the platform. The Battle of the Philippine Sea is over. Japan's carrier air power is extinct. But the weapon that made it possible is just hitting its stride. Its final, most controversial chapter will not be written against aircraft, but against the cities of Japan itself, where the chemistry of the bullet will be scaled into a nightmare of a different magnitude. 1945, the home islands of Japan. The strategic problem has shifted, but the chemical principle remains the same. The Zero is defeated. The Imperial Japanese Navy is a ghost fleet. Now the enemy is the will of a nation sustained by a war industry dispersed across thousands of small workshops and factories nestled within densely populated wooden cities. High-altitude, precision bombing with high explosives is failing. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Clouds, winds, and the diffuse nature of the targets render it ineffective. The solution is not precision. It is conflagration. The M1 incendiary round was a surgical application of chemistry, a pinpoint injection of magnesium fire into an aircraft's vital systems. The next logical step is to remove the copper jacket, scale up the payload, and drop it by the ton. The technology evolves from a 46-gram bullet to a 6-pound canister, and then to a 500-pound cluster bomb containing hundreds of smaller incendiaries. The core agent is no longer just magnesium, but a gelatinized petroleum compound, napalm. But the spark, the instant, friction-based ignition system, that is the direct descendant of the M1's impact fuse. The same chemistry that ensured a .50 caliber round would ignite upon striking aluminum now ensures a small bomblet will ignite upon striking a tile roof. The first major test of this scaled horror is Operation Meeting House. The 9th of March, -10, 1945. Tokyo, over 300 B-29 superfortresses, stripped of defensive guns to carry maximum bomb loads, approach the city at low altitude. At night, their payload is not high explosives. It is 1665 tons of M-69 incendiary clusters. Each cluster bomblet is designed to punch through roofing and then spew a jet of sticky, burning napalm. The first markers fall, then the cascade. The physics are apocalyptic. The small, scattered fires merge into firestorms. The rising heat creates hurricane, force winds that suck oxygen from the streets, incinerating everything in a self-sustaining thermal vortex. Temperatures exceed 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Water in canals boils, metal melts by dawn. Over 16 square miles of Tokyo are ash. The casualty estimates range from 80,000 to over 100,000 dead in a single night. It is the single most destructive bombing raid in human history, exceeding the immediate fatalities of Hiroshima or Dresden. In the cockpit of a B-29, the crew feels the heat through the fuselage, smells the smoke of a burning city. The gunner who once fought Zeros with a .50 caliber now watches an entire metropolis become the functional equivalent of a Zero's fuel tank, fragile, flammable, and utterly defenseless against the injected flame. The weapon has completed its evolution, from a tool to kill a single aircraft, to a tool to kill a city. The principle of the magic bullet: target the vulnerability, inject the fire, guarantee catastrophic kill has been extrapolated to a strategic doctrine. The chemical victory over the Zero paved the psychological and industrial pathway to the firebombing campaign. It proved that incineration worked. It proved it was efficient. And in a bunker deep beneath Tokyo, Japan's military leaders finally understand the full arc of the mystery that began over the Solomons. The same terrifying efficiency that erased their elite pilots from the sky is now erasing their cities from the map. The connection between the exploding Zero and the burning capital is a straight line, drawn in chemistry and refined in fire. Only one question remains. How does it end? With surrender, or with the application of a final, even more profound transformation of the incendiary principle? The 9th of August, 1945, Nagasaki, the B-29 boxcar releases its single, unique payload. It is not an incendiary cluster. It is a plutonium implosion device nicknamed Fat Man. Its detonation creates a sun on Earth, a blast of heat and radiation that instantly kills tens of thousands. Yet, even in this apocalyptic conclusion, the ghost of the incendiary bullet is present. The atomic bombings did not occur in a vacuum. They were the final argument in a strategic dialogue that began with .50 caliber rounds. The firebombing campaign, made possible by the same technological lineage as the M1 incendiary, had already burned 66 major Japanese cities to the ground, It had killed perhaps 500,000 people and rendered millions homeless. The Japanese Supreme Council for the Direction of War in the spring and summer of 1945 had accepted this devastation. They had prepared to fight an invasion, believing the national will could endure the fires. The atomic bomb was different, not just in scale, but in tempo. A single aircraft could now do the work of Faye. It was the ultimate, logical extension of the principle, first proven on a zero maximum destruction for minimum expenditure of force. It was the final brutal efficiency. When the surrender finally came, it was not because of one weapon alone. It was the cumulative effect of a war of attrition lost at every level. In the skies over the Solomons, in the deep blue of the Philippine Sea, and in the ashes of Tokyo. The Mfae incendiary round was the first critical link in that chain. It broke the back of Japanese air power, which allowed for the strangling of their maritime supply lines, which led to the uncontested bombing of the home islands, which created the context where a single new weapon could deliver a psychological shock that the relentless, familiar horror of fire could not. Epilogue. The forgotten equation, the story of the M1 incendiary, is not one of a heroic engineer or a lone ace. It is a story of a correction. It is the story of industrial warfare identifying a critical vulnerability and engineering a specific, horrific solution. It turned a tactical weakness, the inability to hit a nimble target enough times into a grotesque strength. The guarantee that one hit was now a death sentence. The men who flew with it knew only its effect. They called it the round that makes them burn. Its success was so total, so seamlessly integrated into the American war machine that it never needed a famous name. It simply became part of the environment, like oxygen or gravity. It was forgotten because it worked, but stand in a silent museum today before the polished skin of a restored Zero. Look at its elegant, fragile lines, and then imagine a single small cylinder of brass and magnesium traveling at 2,900 feet per second. Imagine the chemical reaction upon impact, the blinding white flare, the fire born inside the wing spar, that moment, that tiny, violent correctionist where the myth of Japanese invincibility ended, not with a famous battle cry, but with the quiet scientific certainty of a guaranteed ignition. It is a reminder that in modern war, the most decisive revolutions are often the ones you cannot see, held in the palm of a hand, waiting to be fed into the chamber. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more.